Good morning, everyone. Starting this video off inside because it was a whopping -6 degrees this morning, which was a few degrees better than yesterday. It was -8, -9, and windy. So it's a little bit on the cold side. It's also a very special day. Our little baby boy just turned 3 today. He's got some nice dirt moving equipment to use, preferably outside when the weather warms up. Don't think he's going to be using it out in the feels like -20 today. Yeah, it's cold outside, isn't it? You gonna dig with those? Nice work. Yay! Can't forget about the littlest hunk either. He's almost 6 months old. As much as I'd love to stay inside and be cozy with the family all day, celebrate the little man's birthday, which we will still do later, the presumably frozen tundra presents the perfect opportunity for me to finally catch up on something that I've been dragging my feet on for 6 months to a year now. The procrastination has been in regards to the Starfire 7000 GPS receiver for mapping our farms and the subsequent GPS data collection I need to do on our farms to have them all updated to this new system. Whether for my channel or other channels on YouTube, some of you are probably already fairly familiar with this process. This just involves driving the exterior boundary of the fields accurately, establishing an actual precise boundary, and also setting your guidance lines if you want to do that additionally. They're two separate things. I'll talk about that later in the video. Right now, I'm setting up this post with a chain on the end of it. It is going to act as an offsetting marker, and that marker will be where the GPS receiver thinks it is. So as opposed to being here, it's actually over here where this chain is. And there's a reason for that, I'll show you. You've got to have the most important part, the brains of the operation, the John Deere Gen 4 4600 display that does all the computer side of everything. Man, this thing is ice cold. I could not undersell how chilly it is outside today, which is why it's a perfect day to do this. 8 inches back and 52.5 inches to the left. That's the offsets we're going to have to use for this. I like it to be somewhat close. Within an inch or two is fine. We're not launching rockets into space here, folks. Just trying to get a relatively accurate point on the outside here. Today's video is brought to you by our friends at AG1. What is AG1, you may ask? Well, I'll explain it to you. AG1 is a daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. It covers your nutritional bases. Instead of addressing one area of the body, foundational nutrition supplements like AG1 raise our baseline health through a variety of science-driven ingredients in a powerful formulation. Promoting your overall well-being seems to get even more challenging when it's brutally cold outside like it is right now. During the harshest parts of winter, I personally struggle with focus, energy, and oftentimes I end up getting sick. Our powerful friend AG1 is here to help though. It supports all of your body's natural functions to make sure that you are working at your optimal levels regardless of what the weather is outside and what challenges your body is presented with. AG1 is a quick and effortless daily habit. It only takes a few minutes per day, and it happens to be way more enjoyable than choking down one of those nasty multivitamins. It actually tastes pretty darn good. Although I like to think I consume a very balanced diet, I know that AG1 has my back and fills in any gaps that I might be missing and gives me the edge I need to perform at my best day in and day out. Boom, I told you, next to no time for this habit. AG1 is making one heck of an offer to get you started on taking care of your own body. If you head over to drinkag1.com/aTrippyFarmer, follow the link in the description or in the comments, they are throwing in a welcome pack with your first order, which includes the canister, a shaker, and a 1-year supply of vitamin D3 and K2, as well as 5 free travel packs when you're on the go. All of this by just using that link to get to the product. Before I let you go, I want to remind you that there is no better time to start taking care of your body than today and supporting yourself with a product like AG1. drinkag1.com/aTrippyFarmer. Follow the link in the description or the video to get started and get your welcome pack. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. Now back to the regularly scheduled programming. Before I get after it, I need to tell you about this thing I purchased just a month ago really quick. It is a 2023 Can-Am Commander. The Commander is like the hybrid between your true side-by-side, like a Polaris Ranger, and a Polaris Razor. I just refer to Polaris because I think they're kind of the king of the industry. Bought it at World of Power Sports in Decatur. They got it taken care of quickly. They enclosed the cab a little bit more for me, and we've now got this to use on the farm. This should do the job, I think. My accounting and tax preparation advice of the day is the best things that you can buy are both entirely for farm use and also something that the family can enjoy, like the side-by-side. Liddy, who turned 3 today, absolutely loves going on rides in this. Although it's not fully enclosed, it's like 90% enclosed. It's got a supplemental heater, no air conditioning for the summer, so it should work for this. Except for it's really cold, so I guess we'll find out. If it's too cold, I'll have to quit. Sorry about the obnoxious heating noise. I've got to have it. GPS was 52, just 52 inches left. So that'll line us up with that post I have in the chain, 52 inches and 8. That is what we need. I already took care of all of the clerical things. I fixed all the field names that I wanted to make changes to. I've deleted or archived all of the old boundaries and auto steer AB lines that I've made in the past. So we basically have a blank slate now of fields with the appropriate names, removed any extras, all kind of clerical stuff like I mentioned. We pull up the field we're wanting to work on, which is this 219 acre field. Come in here, just a few buttons, application, field boundary, create boundary, drive boundary. I'm going to go ahead and just hit start, and then you need to drive around the outside of the field. However, if you want the most accurate boundaries, you actually should drive paused as much as possible, because the more you drive, it is going to follow every single wiggle you make through the field. I like to scatter points as I go. That way I know that there's not a bunch of random squigglies for me driving on the rough frozen ground. I've already mapped 3/4 of a mile down the road, and you can see here it hasn't taken a lot of shape in the field because you don't start to add a lot of true area or acres until you start to go perpendicular. So as I come down this end row, you'll see it start to connect the dots, and that's when this field will really increase in size. And as we square it off, these are the quick ones because it's 220 acres, give or take an acre or two, so you knock out a good chunk, hopefully in relatively quick time. The lane that's on the south side of this property is also not straight at all, so having a boundary like this is very helpful. I'll talk a little bit more about my goals with the boundaries versus with the AB straight steering lines once I get a moment to kind of talk. I've driven a little bit, so I'll just hit resume and then pause. That way it's not recording what I'm doing while I'm driving, but you can see that alone just added a nice little triangle in there. It's going to keep going for a while. Just to kind of showcase the point of the fence post in the chain, it's purely for visualization of where I'm marking. That way I can kind of tell when I'm deciding where I think the outside of the field should be. That's somewhat close to where it is. On some farms like this one, there's not much of a difference between where the field ends and where the ditch or the waterway begins. In this case, it looks like there is no edge. It's just the field goes into the waterway. She's really starting to take shape here. I think this same outfit was set up here last year when I was trying to do this mapping. We got their fake geese out here. There you have it, our completed boundary. Just click save. Then what I like to do is go back to the boundary page, see how it measures. 219.37. Consider that checking our work because I always show this as 219 acres. That's what it measured, so my boundary's close enough. Now for the part that's probably going to confuse some of you who are farmers, I'm also going to go in and make some AB lines for straight line steering. When I'm recording these AB lines, with that offset we calculated earlier, it actually is going to put the line 30 foot over. So when you pull in this field and you pull up that line, because everything was done with an RTK system, this SF RTK 7000 receiver activation, the whole 9 yards, that line should stay there forever, or at least till they upgrade us to a new system and cancel this system and make us do this all over again. The point being is when you pull it up, all you gotta do is hit resume. You don't have to try and guess where it needs centered. You do that and it will grab the line that I create. So I'm going to set an A point here at this pole, and I'm going to drive all the way down to the south end and set the B point, and we should have a relatively straight line here. A lot of you watching at home are probably wondering, what is the purpose of mapping the edges of your field? Why are you making AB lines? What is all this GPS stuff you're doing? At the end of the day, this just comes down to making the least amount of work for the operator when it comes time to plant, harvest, till, whatever we're doing, spraying in particular, because that's something I do, is a lot of steering. Regardless, my goal here with having accurate boundaries for the first time is I want to be able to run a program in the John Deere monitor called Boundary Track. It really works out to be the best time to explain this to you all because I'm on my union contract mandated Coke Zero break. I get 1 an hour. I'm sure every company has some variation of the Boundary Track. Essentially, it's an auto steer line that perfectly mimics the outside of the field based on the boundary you created. The line generation page up right now, Boundary Track, I do a boundary fill track, and then it's going to say, okay, well, is this the boundary we want to use? Yeah, that's the one we just made. We hit next. Track name, because it's going to want to know what the track is. I mean, I would probably not name it or boundary it because you could regenerate it every time. The boundaries will be in all of our monitors when I put all this new data that's organized onto all of them, which there's some more clerical work that goes in before that. Regardless, hit OK. Now it's going to go in, and I don't know how it does it because it seems rather complicated. It's going to calculate 30 foot inside from the boundary because I have a 60-foot track. So this boundary will infinitely go in as long as it's capable of calculating the next one, because sometimes once it gets too tight, it kind of makes issues, but really you'd only ever run 1 or 2 of these on the outside of the field. And this boundary track that I speak of will pull you around the outside of the field. You don't have to go to your menus, flip through different lines. It grabs you into here. Once you're here, you lift up, you back in here, and you plant. You grab this line, you keep going that way. No flipping through menus, nothing. You just stay on this page. Once you have that done, you can go just pick a different line and plant in the field. It's genius, really, and part of the reason that I'm not wanting to record the entire length of the field, I just want to drop points, is because this thing is actually extremely accurate. If it feels you wiggling down the line, when you go to plant this field, spray this field, whatever, do your field work, you will feel it following those individual wiggles as you go through the field. So you want to scatter your points so it's doing the least amount of compensating as you go. I mean, it'll probably round them off a little bit, so it will look all right, it will feel all right. You just don't want to drive it because you're just going to get too much wiggling. If it's a sharp curve, you may have to drive it. For the most part, though, you just keep sprinkling your points, and hopefully you get a good enough boundary that you get an awesome boundary track. So maybe asking right now, if all you need is a boundary to have a line all the way around the outside of your field for every single nook and cranny, why are you also dropping AB points? Well, I don't really want to. However, my boss, who's also my dad, bless his heart, is a little stubborn and does not want to learn how to run a boundary track. So he insisted that I at least come put simple AB lines on naked in-rows next to the neighbors. I'm sure there's actually an appropriate term for this, naked in-row, naked property line. It's just the words I made up. Basically, you've got a neighbor here to the west, Alan and Scott Montgomery. You've got a fence post right here, and then, I don't know, 300 yards down there, there's another fence post. In between here and there, the only thing you have to base your steering on is that post over there and wherever the tillage, the residue mark is in between. So sometimes you get a lot of wiggling, even if you're a good driver. That's a long distance to hand steer and get it straight, unless you're really good at guesstimating where you need to be looking as you drive. That is why Dad wants an AB line here. The boundary track will do the same thing because I dropped a boundary point here and over there. Dad, though, doesn't want to figure out boundary track, which is frustrating because I got to do extra work to redo these lines. And he'll just come in here like I did over there on the other side of the field to start. He'll grab his line, pull it up. Okay, this is the southwest corner of the field next to Scott and Allen. Pull it up, hit resume if he's in the right area, and he'll grab and just take him down the property line. Some people may suggest, well, you could also give them AB curve lines on a lane like this that isn't straight or whatever, something like that. My issue with the AB curves is unless I'm missing something, you cannot pause them. So you have to exactly drive that line, and you'll get the same issue that I just mentioned. You'll get the wiggling. I like the boundary track because I can sprinkle the boundary points, then generate the line, and it should be even better than a true AB curve. And honestly, anything that has a curve in it, unless Dad takes a leap of faith and tries the boundary track, he's going to steer it himself. I could also steer this stuff myself. I mean, it's not like I can't stay somewhat close to the edge of the field. My problem is more of a mental one. I tend to be a little more OCD. If I can do the least amount of steering and have the straightest possible inrows, I mean, there might be a curve or two there, that's what I want. I want the field to look as good as possible. I want it to be easier to spray. I want it to be easier to side dress. Everything you could think of, I want it to be easier. The straighter it is, the less curves, the less wiggling, the better it looks. Not sure there's really a return on investment on that, but I'd sleep better at night. I'm back home. I'm wishing this little mini workshop was heated. It's not. It's chilly in here too. Got the data off the screen, so I don't have to run the risk of losing it. It's a little early to quit. It's my son's 3rd birthday. There's nothing really fun to do, so we're gonna take him to a movie. The movie's at 4:30, so I figured why not quit early? You know, what else am I gonna do? I'll check in with you guys tomorrow. Unfortunately, it ended up snowing a little bit more outside last night, and it was enough to coat the fields to the point where I don't feel like I can accurately make boundaries and lines without a good fence post, which a lot of our fields don't have solid corner posts. So I'm probably gonna have to postpone the rest of my mapping and auto track line creation until the snow melts off here in a couple days and then it freezes back up. That's my goal right now, especially on these farther away farms. I don't want to drive all the way over there, do all this work, and then come to find out that I messed something up because I didn't see the boundary correctly and I have to go back and do it. Just to quickly show you what I accomplished yesterday, got almost 1,000 acres mapped, maybe right under there, so almost a quarter of the way done. A lot of these turned out exactly as I expected them. Really good boundaries. What I like to see is the boundaries that kind of butt up right next to each other perfectly. Most of them appear visually on here to be correct, although I'm not sure how accurate this website is in terms of spatial positioning versus where the GPS coordinates come in. When I was reviewing, I did notice this point right here, which I don't entirely understand how that was created. It is right next to the main farm, so I may just go back out when it gets a little more fitting and redo this field, because there's a few spots there where it appears that I missed part of what we farm, and I don't know if that is a mapping issue like I just mentioned, or if I legitimately couldn't see the field because of a little snow yesterday. So I could revisit that. It's not a lot of effort, and maybe reevaluate after that. You can see I really went clean slate because, you know, we've got fields spread all the way through here, some down here, and some over here. There's nothing left in this system. Did all of that stuff before I started. That way I didn't have to look through all my lines and determine which ones I needed to keep and which ones I needed to get rid of. Because we do butt up next to each other on a lot of these fields, you know, we are the neighbors, I'm able to save a little bit of driving time on creating the AB lines, because I can go into the John Deere system and just copy the line from this farm over to this farm. And then you can safely assume that they have the same AB line, almost identical lines, just on opposite sides of the fence. So that's what I'm probably going to do this morning while I sit around and wait for the weather to become more ideal to do some work, copy all the fields that need lines shared to each other. The land manager in the operations center has a feature that makes this super easy, and my naming system also helps me know how to transfer them. So these two lines, east and south next to Downing, which this is one of our farms we call Downing, it's Jeff's Downing. I just select the line I want individually. I go up here to copy. Then it's just going to want to know what field it goes to. In this case, it goes to Jeff's Downing. And then what I will do is come in here and retype these the opposite way so they make sense. I'll change it to the west line. I'll say South 40 or something, and then I'll delete this duplicate number here. I want to give you a quick rundown of what's happening on the farm this morning. Although it is cold, 10 degrees right now, it is supposed to get right around freezing, so I'm hoping that all of the snow melts, and then it's supposed to get cold again tomorrow into the next day. Should freeze the ground up pretty firm, and I might be able to go knock out a bunch of that mapping. The snow right now, as I mentioned yesterday, is just not really benefiting the progress of this job. I'd like to get it done because they're calling for warmer temperatures up into the 50s next week and rain, which means the only thing we're probably going to be able to do is haul grain on firm bin sites like this one right here. You can obviously see the conveyor has been moved to the south 36-foot grain bin. It's got corn in it, and we're just trying to keep the wheels turning in progress. It is the highest moisture corn. We put it in like 17, 18%. We're just gonna start emptying bins. I don't know if we'll core it and move on or just fully empty it. Just kind of see how the progress goes today. We were still waiting on York Bin Co. to fix the power sweep on the bean bin. There's maybe 4,000 bushel of beans on the floor. I guess a bunch of their workers got sick. There's been some illness going around here the last few weeks. People just getting really sick, flu-like symptoms. I don't know if it's COVID 5.0 or just RSV. I mean, it could be any kind of respiratory illness. A lot of people not been feeling that great, even some members of my family. So we just postponed that one. I mean, we got enough beans off of it that bin's not going to get away from us at this point, and we'd like to keep going. I learned my lesson a few years ago with these conveyors. When it's going to be really wet outside and then freeze really hard like it did, in advance, if you want to get any work done at a different site, you need to pull the conveyor out, because these conveyors, especially if you've got that field loading flat edge on the end, will freeze solid to the ground. You won't even be able to yank them out. So I pulled them out ahead of the cold weather from the bean bin. This morning, because the temperatures are creeping up, not worried about our trucks gelling up, even if we're running winter blend diesel fuel with some number 1 in there. We don't haul. If it's going to be 0 degrees, folks, we're not going to haul. It's not worth the trouble. Even with treated or blended fuel, I just don't see the risk to reward being there. Crappy roads, salt, all that stuff. So we waited until the day. Should be able to knock out some bushels in this bin with both trucks, assuming they run fine. Chris, Jeff, and I got everything set there. Now I'm just waiting for Jeff to bring his truck over to make sure that this backhoe isn't frozen on the inside, because sometimes these conveyors will get ice up against the belts and they won't run. So hoping that's not going to happen, although it is a possibility. That's why I'm sitting here as opposed to bringing my semi over. Time to find out if the conveyor works. Yeah, that's what I get for saying this is going to go smoothly. The belts on the conveyor are frozen, so it's not wanting to turn. The drive belt up there is squealing, so the actual main conveyor leg is frozen. This would be a nice time to have a heated shop, so you can just pull your conveyor into your heated shop and be thawed out in an hour. I might try to find the torpedo heater salamander, stick it in there with a tarp, warm it up where all the belts go under. I really don't know. That's how the old Eskimos would do it. Got the torpedo heater in there, got a little windbreak with that worn out tarp. Give it 10 minutes or so and maybe it'll run. The heater's been on for a little bit over an hour now. Jeff went ahead and just put his truck back in the shed. I'm not sure if this is gonna work. I've tried it a few times, it hasn't gone. Nope. I think it's frozen in here somewhere, although I'm not sure. I mean, it's probably not going to work. It's going to get up close to freezing today. Maybe a combination of some warmer temperatures and sunlight will thaw it out. If not, we're just not going to haul. Don't really have anything else we can do with it. Fast forward to the next day. Yesterday afternoon, the conveyor finally decided to thaw out. By the time it did, it was too late to start hauling for the day. It didn't happen until 3:30 or so, and the elevators close at 4. Because it's so cold, we want the trucks parked inside. We don't like leaving the loaded trucks on the concrete, yada, yada, yada. First load's out of the bin. That's progress. Now this is service. Oh boy, folks. I mean, you want to talk about the ball rolling downhill once it's started. Another issue, this time it's with my truck. I've got some kind of an electrical issue going on. It could be related to the fact that I had to jump the truck this morning with a battery charger. I don't know if I blew a fuse or what. Once I got it started, my left half of gauges are not working properly, including my volt gauge, which is nice to know your power level. My ultra shift down here is flashing service. Probably again a power issue. Probably either a fuse in the fuse box, a fuse on the batteries. The batteries could be bad, which kind of unlikely. And what I'm hoping it's not is that the alternator is bad. So I got to run home, get my voltmeter, voltmeter, whatever you call the thing, and make sure everything's right. So that's what I'm going to do. For the record, I'm not a qualified mechanic, and I'm sure many of you know that. According to our actual mechanic, the battery should be showing about 13 to 14 volts when the truck is running and charging. I'm showing very little voltage. voltage here. Fuse is good. That fuse is also good. We're taking a wild assumption that I did all this right. Max voltage I saw out of the batteries was about 5.5 or so. Max I saw out of the alternator was 3. And again, that's assuming I grabbed the right post. I'm gonna go ahead and get the battery charger, put it on here, and then we're gonna go from there. Maybe I can get the load to the elevator, then go to the service shop if I need a new alternator. We'll see. We let the batteries charge for a few hours. We're gonna go ahead and take the truck to the elevator, using as little power as possible in terms of battery power, electric power, not engine power. I only got one set of engine power, and that's full power, metal to metal. After that, I'm gonna dolly down the trailer and take it into the service shop, have them check it out, and see if it's a battery issue or a wiring issue. Back at Premium for the first time this year, delayed price in corn. Check out this dump trailer. We need one of those. Open up the floodgates. The back section of this trailer has probably more collective reflectivity than every piece of stainless steel and aluminum on our farm. I mean, that's polished up nice. We don't quite have anything that fancy. Finally got my first load to the elevator in the time Jeff has hauled before. 15.3% moisture, which is about perfect. 60.3 pound test weight. Pretty satisfactory. I just dropped the trailer off and at home at the shed, and there goes Jeff with another load. We're gonna let the mechanic look at this, make sure everything's kosher. We started this excursion with 12 to 13 volts on the batteries. We've worked our way down to maybe 11.5 and sometimes lower. It seems like we are getting some minimal charge out of the alternator. I think it is the alternator, although I'm very, very, very far away from an expert. Typically when you're running, you'd like to see this boosted up into this middle range. It never really passed the starting point of the battery, so I'm hoping it's the alternator, because if not, we're about to pay a lot of money to have someone tell us our batteries are bad, which could be that or it could be a wiring issue. For now though, I'm just gonna leave this here in the hands of a qualified expert, which is not me. As of right now, everything is going according to plan for tomorrow, which involved the snow melting, and it actually did quite a bit. Got warm enough that the ground's actually a tad bit on the sticky side on top right now. Gonna get back down to 0 first thing in the morning, so I'm making my preparations to go map some of our farther away fields. Unfortunately, before I load the side-by-side up, I have to showcase to you all an incident I had the other day with Dad's fancy new dump trailer. I went out and trimmed some trees and limbs on some fields where they were overhanging, scratching our combines, our equipment, that kind of stuff. And I went to go dump them out, and they wouldn't come, and I didn't have this door latched, and it swung out while I was dumping. I tried to pull up a little bit. I just honestly was kind of careless, to be 100% straightforward with you all, and it bent this door. The worst part is that this door is the door that holds both doors shut together. So what I'm gonna have to do here, I think, to make this work is unhook these doors, take them off for now, and we're gonna try and bend them back into place later. For now though, all I need is to be able to get into the trailer, and this has ramps for that. First one was easy. Is it heavy? Not terribly, but I would have hated to drop that on me too. Well, Murphy, we weren't planning on more snow and a lot of wind this morning. It's gonna thaw out next week and get wet according to the forecast, or whatever that's worth. So I'm just gonna go ahead and head west, see if I can get this knocked out, It didn't snow as much as it appears. The wind is just causing some drifting. The fields themselves may have actually blown over, and most of that snow is not there. So I'm gonna go over to Tower Hill. It's about an hour drive, try and get this knocked out. The fields that I have left around home, I can all mostly reach without loading it in the trailer, so that's why I'm prioritizing these today when I got time. I know the ground's firm. I wish you could have weather like this and it not be bitterly cold outside, because it is beautiful. However, a lot of the beauty does come from the fact that it's cold. So double-edged sword there. Oh geez, after dealing with all of the travelers on this 35-mile journey, and believe me, there's some interesting ones when the weather's like this, we've been greeted by some very friendly weather here. And no, it's not actively snowing, it's just very windy and the snow's blowing around. I'm gonna get unloaded and get after it. Much to my surprise, the battery was not dead this morning, although a little bit of snow did get in the cab. I got everything out, got everything set up, and then got back in the truck, because sometimes it takes about 5 minutes for this SF-RTK, the satellite-based RTK system, to get to 100% accuracy, and I don't really want to start before it does that. Gave me a moment to thaw my hands back out. I just finished up the third and final field over here at Tower Hill. This field and farm in particular is a prime example of why people are moving to the 7000 series John Deere SF-RTK systems, because normally when I get this far away from home, I'd have to switch away in my display from the tower we connect to in Mattoon, that Alliance Tractor services, to a tower over here somewhere, assuming I can even get access to a competitive dealership's tower. Sometimes you can, sometimes you have to be whitelisted, other times they just let anyone on. It depends. Because of the SF-RTK system, there is no manually changing anything. It passively selects the best place in the sky, somewhere satellite, I really don't know, it's about my pay grade, for you to be connected to. And that's the beauty of this. We did have an issue last year where we found out Dad's planter tractor was set on the tower for this Tower Hill area all year. So we planted everything at home off of our Tower Hill RTK signal, and 40 miles is about pushing the max limit of accurate GPS data transfer and, you know, straight lines, whatever. So our planting back home looked terrible. Our planting over here looked great though, and there's really no one to blame other than myself, because in a roundabout way, I am in charge of our steering systems and making sure everything's set properly, and I just completely forgot to switch towers at the beginning of the year. We ended the year over here, and you know, once you're done with the year, you just turn everything off and start thinking about harvest after planting. And so it's a learning lesson, but with this SF-RTK 7000 receiver system, shouldn't have that issue anymore. I'm excited to get back in my truck and warm up a little bit. This thing blocks a lot of the wind and keeps my upper body warm. Headed back to home base after a long and very cold day of mapping fields. It's been relatively uneventful, which is exactly how I prefer my work days to go, especially after the start we've had to the new year. Speaking of poor starts, I do have an update on my semi truck that I haul with. The alternator was in fact bad, so they got that replaced. We'll be able to get back to hauling whenever we need to. Although this job I'm doing right now, mapping fields, is kind of like a 50-50 priority with that. If I know Jeff can haul, which he has been, then I might not be as afraid to work on this if I get a good opportunity. Mapping the fields isn't something you have to do every year, but because we switched to the 7000 series dome and the satellite-based RTK, it requires you, according to the experts, to redo all of your lines, because the initial ones with the radio RTK they don't save the same. I really don't know how that works. That's just what they told me. Anyways, I think that is going to end the video for this week. I'm out of updates. It's cold here, folks. We're getting work done slowly with a lot of problems along the way. You guys know that if anything else pops up, I'll be sure to showcase it to you all. Maybe. If it's bad enough, you may not see it. The worst things you don't see. That's the beauty of being the film crew and the editing crew. You get to pick and choose what makes the video and what doesn't. Okay, that's enough jibber jabber. We go home, hang out with the family. Definitely apply some chapstick, because I'm like crusty right now from how dry it is. As always, everyone, I greatly appreciate every single one of you continuing to tune in and support the channel. Your viewership means the world to me. I'll catch you all in the next episode. Until then, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!